The day I moved into Willow Creek Estates was the day I unwittingly stepped into a Cold War. The neighborhood was picturesque in the way real estate agents dream about. Neatly trimmed lawns, hydrangeas lining each walkway, American flags waving in the soft breeze, and kids pedaling their bikes along perfectly paved sidewalks. On the surface, it was an oasis. But beneath the white picket fences and pastel paint jobs, controls simmered like a pot on the verge of boiling over. I was Jack Langston, 32, tech consultant, and after years of freelancing and couch surfing, finally a homeowner. The house, a tidy two-story colonial with navy shutters, felt like a tangible reward for every sleepless night and failed pitch. I moved in with the intention of blending in, of finally finding peace. But peace was the one thing Willow Creek didn't offer freely. My first week was uneventful. I unpacked boxes, met a few neighbors, and started morning runs along the neighborhood's looping trails. It wasn't until the following Monday that I got my first taste of the Homeowners Association. A plain envelope sat in my mailbox. Inside, a notice. Violation, Section 3.2.7. Refuse bins must be removed from the curb within 60 minutes of collection. 60 minutes? I had left the bin out for maybe 2 hours while working from home. I rolled my eyes and filed the letter in a drawer. The second notice came 3 days later. Violation, Section 5.1.3. Unauthorized lawn ornamentation. It referred to a small bronze owl on my mailbox, sentimental junk from my niece, whose eyes lit up when she saw it during our FaceTime call. I removed the owl, reluctantly. That night, I mentioned the HOA to my next-door neighbor, an elderly widower named Harold. "Karen got you already, huh?" he said, watering a potted fern on his porch. Karen Whitmore, president of the HOA. She's been ruling this place since her husband passed. Real piece of work. Harold's voice dipped into a whisper. She's got eyes everywhere. Security cameras, volunteer patrols, anonymous tips. She's the law around here. I laughed, thinking he was exaggerating. He wasn't. 2 weeks later, I bought myself a Tesla Model Y, midnight silver, fresh off the lot, all electric, and everything I had dreamed about since Elon Musk was just a name in Wired magazine. It wasn't just a car, it was a symbol. My symbol. I parked it in the driveway that evening and stood there for a moment, soaking it in. The sunset reflected off the hood like a mirror. It looked right at home. That night, I slept well. Until the knock. It came just after noon the next day. I opened the door to find her, Karen Whitmore in the flesh. She was exactly what I imagined. Late 50s, silver bob cut like a helmet, aviator sunglasses, clipboard held like a scepter. She wore a navy blue blazer and slacks, as if this was a press conference instead of a casual visit. "Mr. Langston," she said, without offering a smile. "I'm here regarding a compliance matter." "Hello. What kind of matter?" She gestured toward the driveway. "You're in violation of HOA Bylaw 8C, Vehicle Visibility and Brand Uniformity." "I'm sorry, what?" "Luxury vehicles are not to be parked in driveways overnight. It disrupts the visual cohesion of the neighborhood." "Luxury? It's not a Ferrari. It's an electric car." "Brand matters, Mr. Langston. Tesla has a reputation." I stared at her. "So, do BMWs. And I've seen 3 of those on the street." She smiled like a snake in the grass. "And they all park in their garages." I gestured behind me. "I'm still setting up the garage." "That's not an acceptable exemption. You'll receive a formal warning in the mail. Good afternoon." With that, she pivoted and strode away, clipboard tucked under her arm like a shield. I watched her leave, stunned. The moment she turned the corner, I closed the door and let out a long, angry breath. I tried brushing it off. Maybe she was just doing her job. Maybe this was a fluke. But the next day, the warning arrived, typed in all caps, threatening a $150 fine for noncompliance. I started asking around. Turns out, Karen had a reputation. One neighbor, a quiet single mom named Leanne, told me Karen once fined her for hanging a hammock between her trees. Temporary, unauthorized structure. Another, a middle-aged couple with a teenage son, had been forced to repaint their mailbox post 3 times because the shade of white wasn't standard. It wasn't about rules. It was about control. I decided to attend the next HOA meeting. The Willow Creek clubhouse was quaint and overly decorated with faux rustic signs. Home is where the heart is. Gather, that kind of thing. About 20 residents sat in metal chairs. At the front, Karen presided over the table like a judge in a courtroom. I waited until the open comment section. "I'd like to propose a revision to Bylaw 8C, I began. "It's outdated and unfairly targets certain vehicles." Karen cut in. "Mr. Langston, the procedure for amendment proposals is outlined in our charter. You'll need 70% resident approval in writing." 70%? That's hundreds of signatures. We take our standards seriously. I looked around. Some residents nodded subtly. Others avoided eye contact. Karen's gaze was cold and challenging. "Is there anything else?" "No," I said, swallowing my frustration. But something had shifted. The next morning, an orange sticker plastered across my windshield. "Second notice. Immediate compliance required." I peeled it off and threw it into the trash. That night, I dreamt of Karen's smug expression and woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in years: defiance. But I wasn't prepared for what came next. 3 days later, I stepped out of the house to find a deep, jagged scratch running along the driver's side of my Tesla. Not a king, this was a slash. Deliberate. Personal. My stomach turned. I called the police. The officer was sympathetic but non-committal. Without security footage or a witness, there's not much we can do. So I changed that. I installed security cameras that same afternoon, 2 at the front of the house, 1 facing the driveway, motion-triggered, and connected to my phone. And I waited. It didn't take long. 3 nights later, at 1:17 a.m., the motion alert buzzed on my phone. I opened the app, squinting at the screen. There she was, Karen Whitmore, clipboard in hand. HOA polo stretched across her shoulders. She walked up to the Tesla, looked over her shoulder once, then drew a small metal object, keys, from her blazer pocket, and dragged them along the car's side. The scratch was slow, deliberate, and cruel. When she was done, she smiled, a satisfied smirk. Then she turned and walked away. I sat there in the dark, frozen. Then I hit save. Whatever line had existed before, between neighbor and nuisance, between order and tyranny, had just been crossed. Karen thought she could scare me, silence me, intimidate me into obedience. But she'd made one fatal mistake. She underestimated me. Revenge wasn't born in me. It was forged, one petty violation at a time. By morning, I had the footage backed up in 3 different places: my phone, a hard drive, and a cloud server. The image of Karen slashing her way across my Tesla played on loop in my head. The smugness. The deliberation. The calculated way she looked around first. She knew it was wrong. She did it anyway. The next step was obvious: documentation. I compiled a report, time-stamped and annotated. I printed photos from the video and inserted stills with captions. Karen approaches, Karen keys the car. Karen walks away. I wanted it to be airtight. Then I called my cousin Marissa. Marissa was a civil attorney and a bulldog in a pantsuit. When I told her what happened, she barely let me finish before barking. "Send me everything. Every photo. Every clip. Every prior warning. We're going to bury her." Within 2 days, we had filed a restraining order and a civil suit for property damage. But that was just the beginning. Karen had declared war. Now I would fight it on every front. I began speaking to other neighbors, casually at first. A comment here, a question there. Then I started hearing stories. "She fined me for planting marigolds," one woman said. "She made me tear down a tree house my dad built," a man admitted. "She told my daughter her shorts were inappropriate for front yard," another neighbor confessed. Everyone had a story. Everyone had been silenced. I started recording those too. Audio clips, anonymous statements, pictures of fines taped to doors. And then I made the website, KarenWatch.com. A simple design, Just black text on white background. The headline, HOA Power Trip. The truth about Karen Whitmore. I uploaded the footage. I added testimonies. I shared the HOA's outdated bylaws and how Karen weaponized them. I added a contact form for others to submit their stories. Within hours, the site began getting traffic. Within days, it went viral. Then came the call from the local news. A segment aired, Neighborhood Watchdog or Overreaching Tyrant, accompanied by a blurry still of Karen with keys in hand. Residents interviewed anonymously. One said, "It's been a dictatorship." Finally, someone stood up. The fallout was immediate. Karen denied everything, claimed the footage was fake, threatened defamation suits. But the board couldn't ignore it. An emergency meeting was called. I attended, front row. Karen sat at the head table, face stiff, lips a thin line. She tried to speak, but this time, no one listened. One by one, board members voiced their concerns. Unacceptable conduct, blatant abuse of power, criminal vandalism. The vote to remove her passed unanimously. Karen rose, red-faced, sputtering about conspiracies and fabrications. She stormed out without looking back. As the doors closed behind her, the room fell into stunned silence. Then someone clapped. Then another. And then we all did. Karen Whitmore's resignation from the HOA presidency sent shockwaves through Willow Creek Estates. The community that once cowered in silent compliance had finally found its voice, and that voice was loud, angry, and unrelenting. But as the dust settled and the cheers faded, I learned something crucial about power. It rarely lets go without a fight. The day after the emergency meeting, a printed sign appeared on Karen's front lawn. Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. It was surrounded by freshly planted thorn bushes and a glaring new motion sensor floodlight. Where once stood garden gnomes and neatly coiled hoses, now bristled a fortress of bitterness. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt watched. 2 nights later, I caught Karen walking slowly past my house. Not pacing, not exercising, just staring. She held a small notepad and scribbled something down each time she looked up. I stayed inside but recorded everything. If she wanted to play silent stalker, I'd play quiet collector. But I wasn't the only one feeling the tension. The HOA board, now under interim leadership by a mild-mannered man named Travis Huntley, was suddenly flooded with resident complaints. Not just about Karen, but about the legacy of her rule. Ambiguous fines, petty restrictions, secret budget allocations. Travis called a town hall meeting to address the community. That night, the clubhouse was packed beyond capacity. People stood in doorways and leaned against walls. For the first time, residents who had kept their heads down were speaking up. A young couple recounted how Karen had fined them for putting up holiday lights too early. An elderly woman described how Karen had shamed her for hanging laundry outside. The room buzzed with shared grievances. I watched it all quietly from the back. This wasn't just about my car anymore. It was about collective trauma, years of subtle tyranny finally exposed to daylight. When Travis announced a complete review of all bylaws and the potential for redrafting the HOA charter, applause erupted. Real change was coming. But just as quickly as hope swelled, retaliation followed. Within days, my Tesla was vandalized again. This time, it wasn't a keying, it was sugar in the charging port. The damage was extensive. The dealership technician shook his head solemnly. Intentional. Malicious. You'll need a full replacement system. I filed another police report. I handed over my footage of Karen's previous attack. But without proof of this latest sabotage, there was nothing they could do. Still, I had a strong suspicion, and now I knew what I was up against. Someone who'd rather scorch the earth than lose control. The paranoia bled into my days. My camera notifications increased, people loitering near my driveway, odd cars parked just a little too long. My neighbors grew nervous. Leanne told me someone had ripped out her newly planted marigolds. Harold found threatening notes left in his mailbox. Traitor to the community. I couldn't prove it was Karen, but I knew it was her doing. Then the letters started. Typed. No return address. folded in plain white envelopes and shoved into mailboxes. Jack Langston is a liar. Ask yourself why he really moved here. Not everyone wants to be ruled by a vigilante. Some residents turned cold. Not many, but enough to feel the shift. A few neighbors who had clapped during Karen's downfall now looked the other way when I passed by. Fear was creeping back in, fear that the storm hadn't passed, just gone underground. That's when I decided to escalate. I reached out to the local journalist who had covered the story weeks earlier, a woman named Erin Cole. She remembered me instantly. Jack, what you stirred up. It's made waves across half the HOA boards in the county. But I'm guessing there's more. A lot more, I said. We met at a quiet cafe. I showed her the new evidence, sugar in the port, the notes, the surveillance footage, the anonymous letters. Erin took notes meticulously. It's not just one woman with a clipboard anymore, I told her. It's the legacy of power unchecked.
She leaned in.
Let me do a follow-up. Bigger story. More reach. This time, we dig deep. The next week, Erin's article dropped. Queen of the Cul-de-sac, How One HOA President Created a Culture of Fear. It was long, brutal, cited dozens of resident interviews. Included screenshots from KarenWatch.com. A psychologist weighed in on the community's psychological toll. A former HOA board member confessed to years of complicit silence. The final paragraph quoted me. When power becomes personal, it stops serving the community. It starts serving only the person holding it. Karen's face was on the front page. That same day, she filed a defamation suit against me.
And against Erin.
And against the HOA. The news cameras came back. Reporters staked out the community entrance. Drone shots of Willow Creek's rooftops appeared on cable news as anchors debated HOA overreach. And then, silence. Karen disappeared. No one saw her for a week. Her car was gone. Her lights remained off. Packages piled at her door. Then Travis received her resignation. Not just from the HOA. From the neighborhood. Karen Whitmore had sold her house. Moved out under cover of night. No goodbyes. No explanations.
Gone.
Karen Whitmore's name still lingered like smoke, even after her abrupt departure from Willow Creek Estates. Her absence created space, yes, but also silence. A silence we had to fill, or risk slipping back into the fear and fragmentation she'd cultivated. Travis Huntley, now officially elected as HOA president, began the cleanup. New policies were drafted. Term limits were installed. An ombudsman role was created to mediate future disputes. Transparency replaced secrecy, but progress, I learned, is slower than outrage. While some neighbors embraced the change with relief, others hesitated, as if waiting for the other shoe to drop. I stayed out of the administrative reforms. My battle had been personal, and I needed space from the machinery. Still, my story had ignited something beyond our fences. The open-source HOA reform guide I had written, equal parts documentation and cautionary tale, had gone viral on homeowner forums. Within weeks, I was fielding emails from around the country. People sent pictures of cracked sidewalks, peeling fences, and violation notices that looked more like threats. A woman from Arizona wrote, "We thought we were crazy. Now I know we're not alone." But change didn't stop Karen. 3 weeks after she moved out, my mailbox was pried open and left hanging. A single envelope sat inside. No return address. Inside, a Polaroid of my car, taken from a low angle, close enough to make my skin crawl. Scrawled on the back were 3 words. "Still watching you." I handed it to the police. It was enough. Apparently, Karen hadn't just moved to escape consequences. She'd relocated to plot new ones. She had been sending mail, leaving messages, and continuing her campaign of intimidation not only against me but also against the current board. The local authorities, initially slow to act, were now forced to escalate the case to the district level. That's when the investigator called. "Mr. Langston, would you be willing to testify? We're assembling evidence to build a harassment and stalking case. Your testimony would be pivotal." I didn't hesitate. Yes. The news broke shortly after, Karen Whitmore had been charged with multiple counts of harassment, criminal mischief, and mail fraud. Aaron Cole, the journalist who had covered our saga from the start, returned for one final series of interviews. This time, she came not to uncover a scandal, but to chronicle its consequences. "I thought the story ended when she moved," she said, clicking her recorder on. "But it looks like the ending is still writing itself." The trial was swift but intense. Karen arrived with a new lawyer, well-dressed and tightly wound. Her hair was perfectly styled, her expression unreadable. She made a point never to look my way. I took the stand and told the full story, no embellishment, no dramatic flourishes. Just facts, dates, footage, documents, screenshots. The courtroom sat in stillness as I recounted how an HOA president used her authority to destroy a car and, when stripped of her power, continued a campaign of psychological warfare. Her defense? That she was misunderstood. That she had merely taken pride in her community and that certain individuals had overreacted.
The jury didn't buy it.
Karen was found guilty on all major charges. Her sentence: 18 months probation, community service, a mandated psychological evaluation, and a permanent restraining order barring her from contacting anyone in Willow Creek Estates, in person or by proxy. The day the verdict was delivered, neighbors gathered in the cul-de-sac, quiet but visibly relieved. No party, no champagne, just the soft thrum of conversation, like we were learning to speak freely again. But the real reckoning wasn't in the courtroom. It happened slowly on our streets and porches. One evening, I helped Leanne, my neighbor, hang paper lanterns for Diwali. Her daughter, Maya, ran up to me with a hand-drawn card. "Thanks for making our house happy again," it read. I tucked it in my pocket and didn't say much, but the warmth stuck with me. A few weeks later, I stood in front of my house, watering the garden, when a man I'd never seen before stopped his bike and waved. "You're Jack, right? The guy with the Tesla?" I nodded. "Just wanted to say, thank you. You showed us it's okay to stand up." My family almost left the neighborhood because of what it used to feel like here. "It wasn't just me," I replied. "It was all of us, finally saying enough." He smiled, then nodded toward my car. "Looks brand new." I glanced back at the Tesla. Repaired. Shining. Parked in full view of the street. Not hidden, not shielded. A statement of presence. "It is," I said. "And it's staying right there." A few minutes after he left, I noticed another envelope at the base of my mailbox. This time my chest tightened, but only briefly. I picked it up, peeled the flap open, and found a gift card to a local bakery. No message. Just the words written in silver ink on the back. "You helped this place breathe again." Not vengeance. Not fear. Gratitude. For the first time since I'd moved to Willow Creek, I truly believed in the community I had once nearly abandoned. We had weathered a storm no one had seen coming. We had allowed one person's need for control to grow unchecked, and we'd paid for it, in fear, in silence, in broken windshields and broken trust. But we also reclaimed something more powerful. We reclaimed each other. And Karen Whitmore? She became a cautionary tale, a symbol of what happens when power goes unchallenged, and a reminder that neighborhoods aren't built by rules, but by people.